Hello everybody, this is Ziggy here. So today I'm going to walk through how to install the add-ons within Ephinea. We'll briefly touch upon things like skins and other sound mods towards the end of the video. But I also want to dive into some of the features that are available without needing to do any downloads, as there are quite a few features that are exposed within Ephinea that users may or may not know about. So let's start with the central add-on that is used primarily by basically every player at this point that I've talked to play PSO to reveal additional information. So we're going to go to this site here for the forum skins and mods within the Ephinea server itself. If we go ahead and open this up in a new tab, there is a master plugin which will allow you to basically stack as much as you want or turn on, turn off, whatever you need. So I'm going to draw your attention to one key thing here. You're going to need to be able to find your EphineaPSO folder. So we'll be going through in a moment, the install process step by step. But just please be aware, generally it's going to be user slash whatever your username is for the computer slash EphineaPSO. To give an idea of what this could potentially do for you, if you haven't seen the stream already, essentially, it'll allow you to do things like track number of kills, how close you are to leveling, which could be very useful if you're looking to reset traps without you necessarily using escape bells or dying. There's a lot of really detailed enemy readers that give you a breakdown potentially of the accuracy needed or estimated chance of hitting an enemy for normal, heavy, special, and it could give recommendations. It has all your item readers, so if 30 items drop on the floor, you have a simple list you can view in order to see all of those items, including things that normally you might not be able to see, such as being able to go into your inventory and see how many hits you need or how many kills you need to unlock a Excalibur, limiter, etc. Honestly, there are so many things you can add to it, including things like checking item lists and mag databases. All of this stuff is extremely useful. I recommend you take a look one by one and just seeing which of these is of interest to you. But this is the core thing you need to install before you go into anything. So if we scroll back up on this list, there's a link to the GitHub. I know some people have mentioned before GitHub can be a little confusing, especially to new users, because when you first land on the page, you're like, what is this? I didn't directly download anything. So fortunately, the steps are fairly simple. If you scroll down, if you haven't already downloaded the redistributable for Visual Studio 2015, just make sure to do so and just click on the download link here. I've already done it, so I'm not going to go ahead and download it again, but this is needed for all the plugins to work correctly. And then if you look on the right side here, there's this little thing called releases. You could click on either the latest or click on releases directly. Either way, you're going to have to click eventually onto the latest release. So it just happens to be this one at the time of the recording. So there's 3 different options. Just click on BB mod zip. So I've already went ahead and downloaded this, so we don't need to wait for the download. So let's go ahead and pop it up on screen just for you. So when you get the download, I think we can hide the browser for a moment to draw focus to this. So when you get the download finished, you're going to see that there's 2 files that are sitting by themselves and a folder called Add-Ons. So fortunately, all you have to do is you copy those 3 files and folders, excuse me, and then you go to your EphineaPSO folder. So you can see here, let me get the mouse on screen for a moment for you. So you can see here, I've already drag and dropped basically those 2 files we saw earlier. And if we scroll up, there's already an add-on folder. So if you're looking to add additional add-ons, it's fairly simple. Now that you have the plugin there, just copy the folder, whatever the add-on happens to be, and paste it in here. So you can see, for example, I already have things for my item readers, kill counts, monster reader, player readers, timers, etc. So all that's there. So fairly simple, straightforward. In order to modify the settings for it, I'll very briefly launch PSO just to showcase what you may or may not need to do in order to update it. So just give me 1 second. But essentially, if we're looking to do things even like customize the fonts, I know some people have been asking, for example, oh, I really want the old GameCube font. Then if you download the font, you can just put it in the font folder. So a lot of it is a lot more straightforward than you may have thought. In fact, we're going to pause the music. Actually, I could leave it going, that's fine. And let's switch over to the PSO scene very briefly. So once the add-on is working, so that's all you had to do. You just drag and drop, make sure the 2015 Windows distributable is active. You should see somewhere something that says main, and then all of your add-ons are now visible to you. Now, by default, if you look to the key to the left of the one, it's the little tilde. That will toggle on and off the main in case you accidentally remove it while you're testing things. But otherwise, the expectation is you use the mouse, you click on whatever you need to click on, and it'll give you options. So I would recommend taking a look through some of these things. We do things like hiding when certain menus are open, so it's not blocking visibility. We'd like to use transparency. Definitely recommend you hard set some of the sizes for position and size, so that way you're not fiddling with it and you don't accidentally drag and drop it when doing other things. But definitely just take a look at some of these options one by one, and as I said before, incredibly useful to be able to view your own character bank and things of that nature. So the purpose of this video is not necessarily to show off every single add-on, but just be aware they're here. We use them constantly. If you see these kinds of little floating menus where it says player, reader, or main, just be aware that all of that comes from the base plugin that we just did, and I maybe clicked on a few other things within the browser directly in that same page where we got the plugin. So that's all I wanted to showcase here. So let's go back and talk about additional things that could be of interest. So let us open, for your purposes, give me 1 second, the browser window one more time. So before we go into some of the things that are base installed into Ephinea, I just want to draw attention to, again, if you're looking for what I'm looking, like all the character readers, all the things I use on stream, I keep a list of everything. I actually zip up everything for users to use. So if you don't want to go through this process and customize to the extent that I did, you're just looking like, oh, I see you have this on stream, I don't want to look up all these add-ons, please check out our Discord. We have a zip file of all the add-ons. Just make sure you do the Windows distributable and you should be good to go. But for a majority of the things that I use on stream, they come from this add-on here. So just make sure to click on these and just add whatever you need to add. So just double check the information here. So for example, I could go into things like the item reader and download as needed the individual files. Again, a lot of it is just kind of the base plugin should cover a majority of these things. Always check releases if it's here. And then just make sure. So for example, this one doesn't have a release. I think that's where some of the confusion comes with GitHub. Sometimes they don't put a release here. When in doubt, just check at the bottom of the page to see if they have a link to the download, and then you should be able to download without any issues. So I knew there was one of them that did it, and that's why I wanted to double check. That way we don't go like help SOS, how do I download? So they'll either put it in releases or they'll put it below the main set of files. So again, a lot of these are things we use pretty much all the time within PSO. They're big quality of life changes. So let's talk about, before we go into any more add-ons, there's one other major series of updates. Let's hide that for now, and let's open up our notes. Actually, before we do that, we'll back up one more step yet again. Let's do something like this. So if we take a look at the folder where we had all the add-ons and we go backwards a step, in the base EphineaPSO folder, there's actually a few files that you can modify without needing to do any downloads. And I think that's where some people get confused, because some people see, for example, my custom map item colors, and they think it's something you download from some other location. So I want to draw attention to that, because that's probably the second most asked question on stream on how I got it to work that way. There are certain files in the base EphineaPSO that you can modify. So the one we're going to start with is going to be the MapItem.txt. This is not a file that I've quote-unquote created. It will come whenever you download the game. What is in the file is something that I've customized. So you can open this in Notepad if you don't have Notepad++ or WordPad, anything that will just let you see plain text, very straightforward. I'm going to open it in Notepad++. Hi, this is post-commentary Ziggy here. I just want to add one more point for clarity when I was rewatching. I don't use the word .color, so when I'm talking about map items here, and we're talking about the different values here, I'm talking about in the upper right, when you have a mini-map that you could customize what items appear and what colors they appear in. So I just wanted to make that clear before we dive deeper into it, and let's get back to the video. I could directly open the file, but I don't think this would mean anything to players, so I put a little translation guide here. So I'm going to leave this up on screen. So the way that this map file works, and where you might want to customize it, it's basically the hex code of an item, comma, the color. The color is just very straightforward. If you do, for example, if you look up hex colors, in fact, let me just pop this up one more time. If you go to your browser and you just type in hex color, you can play with the slider all you want, and you can get the exact hex value that we're using here. So if you're looking to understand what OA9 ABO looks like, that's the color that it looks like. So straightforward, you could do that on your own time. What is not as straightforward, and where I think there's a lot of confusion, is let's go to Monogrinder. So I'm going to draw attention to something. So this is something that took me a little bit to figure out, but you can see on any given item page, if you go into the Ephinea Wiki, there's a hex code. So this says 030A00, right? So default instinct is to just copy paste this into the map items. And for me, that didn't work. So what I had to do, so just be aware, you need to look it up on the wiki. We're going to go back to the notes one more time. Is that I had to translate this hex that we just got from the wiki into something the item reader can read. So just for the Monogrinder that I just looked up arbitrarily, I essentially, if I had to explain the process and how I flip it, I basically take the hex, I remove the 0, because otherwise I'm going to get confused. Then I start typing kind of like right to left, because you're basically flipping the direction it's being read. So if the first character on the left is 3, then I know the final character is 3. So you just basically type it backwards. So if I match this backwards, you'll notice it'll match the thing that I'm using for the map item hex. And then what I do, remember I remove that 0 at the beginning, I add this 0 at the beginning again. That's all I'm doing. It is kind of annoying, I'm not gonna lie, but that's what I've been doing in order to kind of go through the items. So I just took a handful of some of the common items. A lot of these I think are already in there. Like I'm pretty sure things like grinders come naturally with the download, but I've customized the colors for the most part for these items. One thing that I kind of did to kind of differentiate it, and I'll talk very briefly about the logic that I was doing here. I usually think of pink like magic, blue like healing. The reason I don't like to use things like green for healing is that things like scape dolls are naturally green. So I've shifted my colors to kind of account for things like rare items are going to be red, scape dolls are going to be green. So if you don't like the colors, just be aware, you could just change the right-hand side for any one of these items, and I'll leave the list up a little longer, so if you just want to eyeball, like, oh, you know, this is the one that I see, but the color's wrong, just take a look. Generally speaking, I don't recommend doing things like monomate and monofluid for the most part, since it can lead to a lot of visual clutter on the minimap. So from personal preference standpoint, I just grab all your essentials of your materials, your grinders, your basic atomizers, since those are pretty much useful throughout, including if it's just fixing for mag synchro, and basically the stronger of the fluids and mates. I still pick up dye fluids and dye mates, but honestly, when you're doing other kinds of runs, where basically like a boss rush, for example, you might not even need to do the dye mate and dye fluid, so just be aware of those things. So again, it's just, you just modify it in the something like a Notepad, Notepad++, WordPad, whatever you have, and you just hit save, and that's it. So just make sure at the end of the day, whatever your format is, There's no extra characters, there's no extra explanations. So I would recommend personally, if you're going to update it, to just save an explanation of what you're doing. Because I don't know about you, but I will definitely forget. Like, I don't know what 10103 is item-wise. So I can always refer to my master list, and we'll keep that up on our Discord for people to reference in case they're looking to just copy-paste the values directly. And where applicable, we're going to provide these values in the YouTube description itself. So that's one major one out of the way, and I think, as I said before, is probably the second most asked question on the stream. Now, there are some other files in the EphineaPSO file. Sure, we'll reload it. If you want to play around with things like the color of the reticles or the spin speed of when you go to target an enemy, all that information is exposed here. So they give a very basic description of, you know, if your 0 to 9 is able to target, what color is it? So by default, these will basically just all be matching. But if you wanted to have a little bit of a distinction, like you're like, oh, you know, I want to be able to distinguish Zond versus Gazond versus Razond versus Barda versus Foe, and you have a set color number that you want to assign it to, you can tweak it so that it's a bit more informative visually to you. And again, if you just want to have it rotate faster, rotate in opposite directions, those kinds of things are in here for you to view. I don't customize it, but just be aware, just another file exposed to you. Read the description at the top talking about alpha. If you're wondering about alpha, usually it has to do with transparency. Just be aware of those kinds of things, and you should be good to go. So there's one other one that we could take a look at. I think it just reset it since I opened PSO. But essentially, if you want to touch some of the built-in shader values, if you want to touch blooming, I know some people are interested in the potential visual fidelity of the game, and they like to tweak strength of light effects or shading, etc., corrections. All this is in here. Do you need it to modify the game? Or excuse me, do you need it in order to enjoy the game? Not really. Is it there for you to modify? Absolutely. So just be aware there are some hidden options underneath the option menu itself within PSO. And again, I'm not sure how many people are even aware that these are exposed for you to modify. So that's why I want to include it in this video, since some people may think that this is an add-on that you get externally. So finally, chat, we're going to talk about a group of different kinds of mods. And we are going to go ahead, close the notes there. We're going to go back to the browser. So in the browser itself, there are a couple of links off of this skins and mods that I want to draw attention to. So for example, if we go into the second link, the Ephinea Wiki skins, Matt has been gathering a list of skins and providing some visual examples in one place for you to go in order to make your desired choice or updates for the game itself. So we're just going to go ahead and follow the links all the way to the skin main page, where we can see, for example, a skin recolor here. If we scroll down below, we can see, depending on what kind of thing we're looking to update, we can find more information on it. So for example, if I click on, let's say HUD. So we want to update all the visual looks of the game itself. We have a list of the skins that are available. If I were to click on, for example, one of these optional UI updates in order to update the look and feel of the game, just be aware that a majority of them are copy said folder or group of files and paste it directly in EphineaPSO. Yeah, so most of these will be captured in the download instructions, but when in doubt, it's going to override. Just be aware, when you start doing things with the visuals and the sound files, I always recommend, if you are not directly adding an add-on, like it's literally in the add-on folder, I highly recommend you do backup copies of those folders so that if you need to reset it, if things don't mesh well together, that you have something to fall back to. So I'm going to give that warning. Please don't accidentally overwrite everything and need to reinstall the game in order to get the base folders back. In case you don't like the look of a skin. So just make sure that you do that. Okay, and so this one's actually fortunate enough to talk about some removal instructions, and so I'm gonna give shoutouts to the Ephinea Wiki. This is not stuff that I saw probably prior to a couple months ago, so good to see that they're being updated here. So for some of them, it's as simple as just removing a file, and technically you could leave it where it is, but just be aware that just safety first, always copy the folders out in case you need to replace them as a backup copy. So that covers basically the skins. It's just a lot of drag and drops. I'll give one more, I guess, shout out to Spuzz. I do see people saying a lot of positive things about this one in particular, so let's go ahead and expand this little base. So some of the updates, for example, for sound effects, update something in data sound, which just be aware, again, make backup of whatever you're attempting to modify. But I think this one in particular has been talked about in regards to removing a lot of the sound effects in the game and making sure that your background music is off, because some people like to multitask PSO, and I think this one is also a somewhat popular request on the stream, I guess I'll say, or at least off stream. So if you're looking to just listen to the rare sound effects, but you don't want to hear like the constant really loud buzzing effects of like a sound effects of like a monist, or annoying pew 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 sounds, because PSO is a very loud game in general. This might be for you if you're looking to multitask. So definitely check out some of the sound options within the system itself. I guess one more thing that I'll mention. One more thing that I'll mention, just so that people are aware. Let me go back to the folder. So I think that covers the majority of things that you need. So if you're looking for fonts or whatever, they'll be within the mod list itself. If you're looking for the add-ons, we covered that. However, if we take a look at some of the data folder within the game, just be aware that most of the things that you're going to download may or may not update this folder. So I'll just put it on here for your reference. You can see it talks about like all the objects for the bosses. Please also be aware that if you go into OGG or any given song, let's pause our music here. If I were to click on any of these are actually all the songs that play within PSO itself. So if you want to listen to those separately, like I'll just click on randomly, let's listen to what Rocket is, for example. Then all of these songs, which may or may not be within the lobby of the game, are also there. You can also have some general sound effects, like your classic rare drop sound effect, are in here. So if you're looking to potentially update here, definitely take a look at this folder, I would say, just so that you can tweak as needed. But I think that's all we're going to cover for today's video. So hopefully this will help you get the add-ons, potentially install additional fonts into that add-on folder, or update into the EphineaPSO data folder itself. So that way you could customize the game to look the way you want it to. And as a reminder, everything that was on that initial browser page that we looked at is approved of by the Ephinea server. So if you see those things and they've ended up in that Ephinea Wiki, for example, then that means the mods have approved it. It does not modify the data of the game in a way that causes weird advantages against other players or things like that. So all this is fine to use. This has been approved. So hopefully whatever you do, whether it's cleaning up the UI or add-ons in order to track monster weaknesses, hopefully those will help you in your PSO journey. But for now, I'm going to sign off and say thank you again for watching. Hope to see you again in the next guide.